And welcome once again to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. Each week we're here talking to interesting people and discussing interesting issues. And today we're going to bring back an old friend.
An old friend, and incidentally, a managing partner of one of the largest law firms in the state, the district attorney, managing the district attorney's office in Oklahoma County. David Prater's been in office about a year now, and we thought it would be appropriate for our viewers to hear from him, to see what's going on. There's always a lot going on in his office, and I got a chance to chat with him just a little bit before the show, and he's got an awful lot on his plate, but doing a grand job and getting very widespread public acceptance of his performance.
There's a lot going on. Oklahoma County District Attorney David Prater, today's guest on The Verdict. We'll be right back.
Every day America uses clean-burning natural gas instead of coal or oil is a day of victory for our environment. That's why Chesapeake chose to explore for natural gas exclusively, and we've never looked back. Because natural gas burns twice as clean as oil or coal, and reducing carbon emissions to combat potential global warming is every bit as urgent as cutting our dependence on energy imports. As America's #1 driller of new gas wells, Chesapeake is moving fast to find untapped reserves of natural gas here at home. It's the right fuel for America's economy and the fuel for a clean air future. We just happen to be early to see it so clearly. Chesapeake, natural gas wins the day.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Today we're very pleased to welcome back to the show the Honorable David Prater, the District Attorney of Oklahoma County. David did his undergraduate work and his law work at the University of Oklahoma. After that, he started in a long and frankly very distinguished career in law enforcement. But he started at the county sheriff level as a deputy, became a police officer after that. Went to work for the District Attorney's Office in Oklahoma County, worked for the AG's office, Drew Edmondson's office, and then also was in private practice for a number of years before being elected a year ago as Oklahoma County's District Attorney. He does a lot of civic work, but one thing I know he's very active and committed to is working for abused and deprived children through Oklahoma Lawyers for Children. He's returning for another verdict appearance to try to tell us what's going on in his office after this first year. David, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Well, welcome back. One year on the job. What's your reflections back of this first 12 months?
It's been a very fast year. Really one that went past us so quickly that it's hard to believe a year went by. But it's been a very challenging year, but again, very rewarding. I'm very honored to be in that position.
Biggest surprises, biggest disappointments, what jumps out at you there?
Oh, you know, really no real surprises. I knew what it involved. Just disappointments are the fact that we can't get our crime rate down to zero. You know, we're still working on it, but really that's our biggest disappointment, that we deal with very sad issues every day. And you know, no matter how we try and local law enforcement tries, those issues are continuing to be there and going to be there.
David, in the area where I practice, I have from time to time an opportunity to get feedback from the public and from other lawyers, and I will tell you risk of being too complimentary, perhaps, your office gets very high marks about not simply your performance, of course that is included, but the performance of your other assistant district attorneys. You must feel good about the kind of staff you have.
Well, I absolutely do, and I'll tell you, if there's any success that that office has been involved in, it's been because of the 160 employees that are in that office, including 56 lawyers. They're the hardest working group of people I've ever been around, and I'm honored to be there in that front office and being a part of that office. They're great.
We've heard a lot and talked some on this show about it, about the new immigration law, and of course it's been in the newspapers a lot. I'm wondering now in the first 2 or 3 months of its effectiveness, what impact, if at all, has it had on your office?
You know, there really hadn't been a whole lot of impact at this point, really more impact on the sheriff's end of it, Sheriff Wetzel's end of it, but we've not even had a case come to our office for prosecution at this point that relates to House Bill 1804. So, you know, again, I think the biggest problem with that bill was a misunderstanding of what it involved and what it required and how it was going to affect the community.
In what way? How could you clear that up?
Well, you know, I think people thought that there were going to be some wide sweeps of persons believed to be illegal, and that we were going to see, you know, men, women, and children all being just swept up and taken to jail. Well, that's the bill doesn't authorize that, and that's not what has occurred.
What changes do you think they're going to make at the legislature this year, and are they talking to district attorneys like you and around the state and the Attorney General to see what's appropriate from your end?
You know, like so many times, we may be the last ones that they speak to. They have not had an opportunity to speak to us yet as a body, nor me specifically. So I'm not sure exactly what they what they're going to do to change it or tweak it a little bit. You know, there's been a great outcry to do something with it. I'm not sure exactly what that is.
When you were on before, excuse me, David, you told us a little bit about what you hope to accomplish in your anti-gang effort and your task force and the like. Can you bring our viewers up to date on what's going on in that regard?
Sure. Very, very proud of the area of our gang prosecution unit. We implemented the gang prosecution unit early on through some federal grants. We have 4 full-time prosecutors, an investigator position, and a support staff position that all they do is exclusively prosecute and deal with gang cases and gang-related issues that come to our office. We had a 49% decrease in gang-related drive-by shootings in Oklahoma City alone this last year. Had 245 in 06, and we had a 49% decrease in shootings this last year. And that, I directly relate that and give credit to our gang unit, the U.S. Attorney John Richter's gang unit, Bill City's fantastic police department and their gang unit, who are out there putting pressure on these people every day. But it's making a true difference, and we've seen a great decrease in gang-related homicides as well. Very proud of that unit, very proud of what law enforcement in general is doing in this community.
Do you get a sense in looking at the results of decreasing drive-bys and the like, that people are changing their minds about whether gang activity is the right thing to be doing, or they're just moving someplace else to do their gang work?
Well, I think we still have plenty of people still involved in that activity, you know, and additionally what I need to talk about is I need to give credit to the community as well, because what we've seen is many community leaders and many former gang members themselves have been involved in anti-gang efforts out on the street, and that's making a great impact as well, because they are out ministering to those younger children who are at those ages where they might, you know, they're right on the brink of which way they're going to go. They could go into gang activity or could not, and they're out there trying to affect a positive change in those kids' lives. So again, that's another positive thing occurring. We have the community engaged as well at this time, but there's still plenty of gang members out on our street that we need to deal with.
I know there is some federal funding coming in from the U.S. Attorney's Office. How is that coming into your office and affecting what you all are able to do? Are you getting some of those resources too?
We've received some of the resources, and that has been what has allowed us to implement our gang unit. Now, problematic is that there was a $555 billion appropriations bill that was pushed through Congress at the 11th hour just before the holiday break that passed. Well, it cut federal funding for justice assistance grants going to local and state authorities in the states from $520 million down to $170 million. Well, the effect of that in Oklahoma is Our justice assistance grants dropped from $4.2 million down to $1.38 million. So it is going to drastically impact not just what our gang unit's able to do out on the street, but it's going to drastically impact many of the drug task forces in DA's offices around the state.
Is that a staffing issue? Is that where you'll have to make the cuts, or how does that money impact your budget?
Well, it impacts our budget because we're short funded anyway. We're only 56% appropriated through the legislature every year. So I start the first day of every fiscal year $4 million in the hole. And these justice assistance grants were the opportunity that we had to bridge some of that gap there. Well, unfortunately, now Congress, they're sawing those planks under our feet right in half, and so that bridge is falling right out from underneath us. That's how it affects us. And when you talk about how we're going to deal with it, you know, the gang issue is such that I can't do away with that gang unit. I'm not going to do it. I will find a way to continue the gang unit, even if that means we sell the furniture. But there will be, you know, there are cuts that are going to have to be made. I mean, we have a huge law firm. That's exactly what we are. And I can't really cut personnel because I am responsible for providing public safety services to the public. You know, we deal with between 15 and 17,000 cases a year in our office, which means that the 56 lawyers handle anywhere between 275 and 300 cases per lawyer per year. That's not counting the carryover from the previous year. So any given lawyer, any one assistant may have as many as 500 cases on their docket at any given time. So I just can't cut personnel.
Let me jump in and get us to a break. We're visiting with Oklahoma County District Attorney David Prater. We'll be right back. You're watching The Verdict.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
That land next door was a mess. Take more than a lawnmower to revive that land. I heard the oil and natural gas people was cleaning up old oil sites, and it wouldn't cost us a plug nickel. Oh yes, sir, it was quite a revival. The whole church showed up, want to make a playground for the kids. It sure is a blessing.
Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma, working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate in Oklahoma City and Tulsa.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. We are visiting with Oklahoma County District Attorney David Prater. Kent, what's next?
Well, David, I was taken by your starting the year underfunded considerably, several $1 million. How do you make that up?
Well, the legislature, they've declined year after year to go ahead and fund or appropriate enough money for our offices to get us up to our 100% level. But what they have done is statutorily allowed DA's offices to try to recoup some money through bogus check fees by collecting bogus checks and taking a fee off those collections, and as well as being involved in drug interdictions and forfeitures and seizures of drug money out on the highways.
How's that worked out?
Well, Not that great lately. What we've seen, I mean, the obvious one first is the bogus check fees. You know, all of us probably have a debit card in our pocket, but I'll bet we don't have a checkbook on us. You know, fewer and fewer people are writing paper checks. And so those numbers are drastically dropping. And so that means that stopgap measure has really just completely almost disappeared. In addition to that, many of these drug smugglers are very intelligent and they're businessmen. So they have learned ways, just like many of us, to move money around that may not necessarily involve the physical movement of the money. Electronic transfers are using plastic as well. And so we're seeing a lot less money running up and down the highway that we're able to interdict and then seize for our own use. So again, the stopgap measures that the legislature's put in place to help us with our funding issues are going away. So really, we are in dire need of the legislature really looking at funding our offices 100%, which has not happened for 20 years.
Do you anticipate your office or the District Attorney's Council or whatever it may be, the association, asking the legislature to add additional stopgap programs to help?
Well, actually, what we're going to continue to do is ask for them to fund us 100%, because really, I have to run additional businesses out of my office just to run our core function, just to fund our core function of prosecution. I have to put on additional people to do the bogus check collections. I have to put on additional people to do the interdiction. We'll continue that anyway because that's a law enforcement function, but we shouldn't be relying on it as a funding stream any longer.
Right, so you have people designated for these revenue enhancement features of your funding opportunities.
That exacerbates the problem, yes, sir.
Okay, let's switch subjects now and talk about juvenile matters, because I know you have a real interest in children. What's going on in that area as far as your office is concerned?
Well, I'll tell you what, Oklahoma County is in a position where we have really had far too many cases, both delinquent and deprived cases, in our juvenile courts for far too long. Our office, we have 8 lawyers out in our office that handles about 1,750 cases a year that deal with some pretty complex cases. You know, when you're talking about the deprived cases that deal with deprived children, those cases can go on for years and years, and you may see a lawyer walk into the courtroom handling 2 full expandable files of documentation that relate to that case. So what we're trying to get, again, more funding. It sounds like I like to spend money. I don't, but it's necessary for the public's safety, you know. But we're going to have to find a way to bring on more lawyers and probably increase to another courtroom in the juvenile justice system, and find a better way to address these issues that relate to deprived children, deprived and delinquent children.
When you start hiring young attorneys to work in the DA's office, what type of opportunities are you having there? Are the universities putting out good candidates for you, or do these people have a special interest in working for a DA's office? What are you looking for, and what are you getting? You
know, work in law enforcement and work as a prosecutor really is a calling. And what we find many times is a lot of the young people that are in law school, they want to come to the DA's office for the experience, not realizing at that point that it really might be a career for them. And what happens is the bug bites them. They begin to love public service. They begin to love serving the public. And what we found is, I tell you, over the last year that I've been there, the interns in the office that we have had serving us are top-notch people. But you have to really want to be a prosecutor because really they're underpaid and overworked. So it has to be a true calling and a true love to get involved in prosecution. And again, I guess to answer your question more directly, we're being served very well by the people that are employed by our office that are sent to us by our law schools locally.
Well, you've got, of course, personal experience at the juvenile area when you were an assistant district attorney, I think, did you not?
Yes, sir.
You were out there, what, a year or two?
Yes, well, I was out there just about 8 months. When Mr. Macy hired me after my internship with him and started me out in the juvenile division. And so I was out there just about 8 months, but it was an area that I very quickly learned that you can probably do the most good in that area than anywhere else in our office, because that's where you can affect a true positive change in the life of these young children that are involved with the court system at that point, and hopefully divert them from a horrible life, a life of crime, or as it goes to a deprived case, pull them away from an abusive, sexually or physically abusive situation with their families and get them into a loving home. So I did have the experience there with that, and so that, even though I was downtown, not directly relating to juvenile cases downtown, it still remained a love of mine and became an emphasis of mine when I took the office. And what I promised my assistants and the team leader out there in juvenile was not going to be a training ground. That was not a place where you train lawyers. We need experienced lawyers out there. I was going to keep lawyers out there, and unless they absolutely requested it, I was not going to move them from the juvenile division downtown, because really it is such a specialized area. You got to keep good, special people out there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm somewhat familiar with the staff you have out there, not completely, but I know Jane Brown and others are very committed, very, very experienced, and very capable. They're doing your office a good service out there.
Yes, sir, they are.
Let me ask you, change the subject a little bit. When you were elected, you talked about wanting to do some things, try to get some new programs implemented, get some new emphasis done. How has that come about in this last year? What have you been able to do?
Really, it's worked pretty well, but still, I'm not where I want to be. Our gang unit was one of the key emphasis that I wanted to really hone in on when I started. And we've been able to put that unit in place, and we're going to continue to support that unit. Another area of emphasis was going to be the domestic violence prosecution team. Much like our gang prosecution team, I wanted to have a domestic violence prosecution team that exclusively handled those type cases. We have that in place for the most part, but I will tell you it's not exclusive yet just to those domestic cases. We have lawyers that are working those dockets and are handling very few other cases, but still we're not there yet, and that's because of the lack of federal funding. We have applied for several federal grants that we've been turned down for because of lack of funding, not because they didn't think that our grants were worthy. We were just told we are not funding new grantees. But we're continuing, just like the gang unit, it's such an important area of practice that we're not going to do away with that. We're going to continue to work toward that, but we're not there yet. I'm very proud of the cold case unit that through an agreement between our office and the Oklahoma City Police Department with Chief Bill City, we have 2 officers, one of his homicide investigators and then one of my investigators. That's a previous homicide investigator from Oklahoma City, Mike Burke, Kyle Eastridge with the Oklahoma City Police Department, and Mike Burke with my office are working this cold case unit. They have solved five old cases as far back as the mid-'70s, wherein those families had not had any kind of an opportunity to address their loved one's loss prior to that. Mm-hmm. And so now they're getting some answers. They're seeing that we are trying to hold people accountable for even these old homicides, which had not happened at this point. So those are just a few of the things that we're doing, but we're tweaking the system every day to try to more efficiently serve the public.
That's going to have to be the final word. District Attorney, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
David Prater, serving our county as Oklahoma County District Attorney, and our guest today on The Verdict. Kent and I'll be right back with a final word after this.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
We are wrapping up a show with District Attorney David Prater.
Yeah, consensus is after a year in the job, he's doing a great job.
More information on David on his website, districtattorneyprater.com, and of course, more information on this show on our website, theverdict.tv. See you next week.
The preceding program was produced exclusively for the Cox Channel.